But it's great to have an opportunity to speak to you, Dr. Yessis. It's an amazing opportunity. Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm glad to be on, and I'm glad to be talking to you.
Well, my background, I mean, your background's very extensive. My background is basically I'm a ex-mechanical design engineer. I kind of did that for 18 years while training and competing as a Muay Thai fighter as well in parallel. And I eventually, 10 years ago, jacked that in to sort of to strength and conditioning and training and coaching fighters as a full-time thing. So this is kind of my passion that I jumped into, fully supported by a very brave family, wife and kids, and this is something that's kind of like my hobby that I'm really sort of trying to push as far as I can. And Muay Thai, I felt in particular, I'm not sure how familiar you are with Thai boxing from Thailand. Yeah?
Yeah, I got familiar through Lawrence.
Yes. He's been doing some great work breaking down the fight strategies and everything that's going on there. Yeah. So an upright striking art rather than any sort of groundwork and wrestling and that kind of stuff. But there is the upright wrestling, the clean work. So there is a kind of a bit of a strength element in there. But I'd love to speak with you today about what your thoughts are on how the fighters in Thailand could do a better job of their training. I'm not sure if you're very familiar with what the typical training regimes in Thailand are like.
No, not really. I've gotten bits and pieces, but not the entire picture.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, they typically train 6 days a week, and it's kind of 2 or 3 hour sessions twice a day. And they tend to start with like a 5 to 10K run. And then they'll be back to do bag work and pad work, and eventually a bit of sparring as well, and perhaps some sort of body weight strength work. The kind of heaviest that we'd kind of term strength work would be like body weight pull-ups or chin-ups and things like that. There's very little done with free weights, and it's certainly more what we'd class as muscular endurance rather than strength development and power development. Yeah. So the training is structured just like that, and that's repeated twice a day pretty much.
Let me back up a bit. So they start off with the running, and then calisthenics and whatnot, all in the morning.
Yes, they tend to do a bit more of the calisthenics in the morning, and it will tend to be more intense pad work and sparring typically in the afternoon session.
Okay. Do they do any technical training as opposed to physical or competitive training?
Yeah, parts of the pad work will be technical as well. So although they will be hitting the pads, they'll be drilling certain reactive movements, and the pad holders interactively hitting back, and they're working counters and drills and things like that. Then typically in the sparring sessions as well, that will be very light actually and very technical.
And who does the correcting, if any?
The coach will be the pad holder, so that they'll be doing all the correcting there.
Okay. Do they typically do much?
Sorry?
Do they typically do much correcting?
Yes.
Okay. I'm always curious as to where they get their knowledge, unless it's just what they experienced and what they know.
Yes. I think you've actually hit the nail on the head there. My experience of big coaches and fighters in that is that they're kind of just copying what the coach showed them when they were a fighter, and then that just gets passed on and passed on, and actually the fighters themselves typically aren't that well educated, because fighting's what they've done rather than doing anything academic. So there's little kind of understanding of sports science, and it's more tradition and following what the elders have told them. That's the kind of cultural relationship in Thailand, and there's a lot of a lot of training practices, if you like, that are more superstition than actually basing any kind of fact. So you're kind of battling that at the moment with trying to change things.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at. I kind of thought it might be, but this is really typical true of all sports.
Mm.
Probably the most technical sport is gymnastics. You really have to get in and break down the movements, especially on higher levels. See, on the lower levels, it could be kind of general. But on the upper levels, they have to be well educated in what they're doing, being able to explain it and show them and then teach it.
Yes.
Because all too often, nobody can show them. They can only tell them what to do. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
All right, so that at least gives me a little bit more background. So go ahead, back to your question. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It's with that kind of approach, something that I've kind of realised when I was going out and testing the fighters, that there wasn't a lot of strength and power development, although they believed they were strong and powerful. In respect to what we would see with athletes that had been training true strength and power, they didn't actually have that. When you tested how much they could lift or how they could stabilise their bodies through a greater range of motion than they use in their typical fighting stance, they were actually quite unstable. And a lot of their apparent power just comes from economy of movement, really, that they're so well rehearsed with the patterns of movement that they've got. They're so efficient and economical and relaxed as they're throwing it that it seems very explosive and powerful. And it is relatively, but without an underpinning of strength and power.
Yeah, and some of them, of course, they have the predominance of white fibers, and of course that's going to lead to better performances. All right, I had a question that just slipped my mind. I had a lot of things that run through my mind as we're talking. If I don't write them down, I'm going to be forgetting them, I think. Well, I was going to mention when you mentioned the foundation, how they didn't have the balance. This is what I found with the 1x20 program. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I am, yes.
1x20 strength training program. I found that this is very effective for developing a foundation. They gain not only better balance, coordination, strength, muscular endurance, you name it. It has surprised me to a certain extent how effective it is. I always knew it was effective because I've been kind of doing it all my life, but it wasn't formalized as the 1x20. At that time, I was just using, do this number of reps for one set and so on. So then it was a little bit more formal. This is what most people enjoy or put their minds around. If you just tell them, well, I want you to do this kind of routine, it doesn't stick. The 1x20 sticks. So if you don't incorporate it, this could be a good addition. And then along with the exercises for the foundation to develop all of the joints in the body. And this is really for the beginners and for the more elite. But for the more elite fighters, you only use it for maybe 1 or 2 cycles. Then you don't use it anymore. So in other words, you're making up for what they didn't get in the younger days. But for the youngsters just coming on, you stay on this program for several years. See, now they have a very, very good foundation. Then they can move, and they're still going to be learning skills. You're just not doing much competition. But they are doing a lot of pad work, and a little bit of sparring, not much, but you're learning how to execute all the different kicks, all the different punches. See, this is what they need. In other words, they're developing their arsenal. Not only are they developing themselves physically, but technically. Now they're ready for competition.
Yeah.
So anytime you have any questions on that, feel free to let me know, and I kind of fill you in.
Yeah, yeah. The problem in Thailand is the culture is so different. Unlike with the Westerners, we're kind of very much into the long-term athletic development model, where we haven't got that early specialization with the kids, with the juniors, where we encourage them to do lots of different things. In Thailand, they're competing as professionals, you know, from the age of 6 or 7. They're in the ring fighting and earning money. So that is what they're doing, and that's the kind of culture we're battling against here in the Muay Thai community from Thailand. In that you've got fighters that are training from that sort of young age and solely doing that discipline. Other than the small amount of cross training, I guess you'd say that they're getting from their training itself, which is a bit of running, really. So they're kind of very, very tunneled into the movement patterns that they do, and anything that you kind of give them outside of that really does throw them out. And it's a really high volume kind of training method, so that rather than kind of varying intensities too much, there doesn't seem to be much of a kind of scientific rationale for how they're progressing the training. It just seems to start at a certain point, and then it's almost you add more volume, and by the time they're kind of adults, the way I see it is actually there's probably a lot of fighters that have developed overuse injuries, overtrained, and end up on the scrap heap, and you don't hear about them. They're gone. That's not because they're not good fighters. It's just genetically they couldn't tolerate that volume of training. And then you've got these outliers that aren't necessarily the best fighters even. They're just able to tolerate the volume of training that's been thrown at them. They're still there surviving and responding to that sort of training method. And any fighter that's not deemed to be able to tolerate it is kind of inferior or not working hard enough, you know, is lazy. So it's a very difficult culture in Thailand to change, actually. And of course, the Western Thai boxers look at the Thais to see how it's done, because they're still the world leaders, because they're still doing it really as a full-time thing. So they're still obviously the best in the world, and everyone's kind of mimicking what they're doing. But I think that is slowly changing. That's what I'm trying to do personally myself, to try and get some information out there. Especially, I'm trying to get it into Thailand, but it's going to be slow because of the cultural and traditional aspects there. But I'm also trying to get West Thai boxers to see how can we kind of plug this all together and use a more scientific approach to try and get a better result from the training without breaking people, and to actually get there with less volume of training and still achieve the same effects without breaking people.
Yeah, and you can. And not that I want to keep harping on the 1x20, but that program, the schools and the coaches who use it are not experiencing any injuries.
Yes.
If they do have any injuries, they're minimal, and maybe 1 or 2 on a team. So it's like they don't even have any. Other schools have gone for 2 or 3 years in a row in sports like football and not experiencing any non-contact injuries.
Yes.
So this is why I keep harping on it, because we're finding it is the program that kind of do almost everything initially.
Yes.
But okay, you're on the right track, but you're not far removed from what we have here in the States. We do the same thing. You take a look at baseball. If they're not playing from the yay high to a grasshopper to the pros, that's all they do is play the baseball. The travel teams that we have, all the better players get on a travel team, and all they do is drive around the country or fly around the country and play other teams. This is their training. It's crazy. Yeah, and then we wonder why we don't get the good players. Like I mentioned, baseball. Take a look at how many great hitters we have. Like I've been reading about Ted Williams again. He just celebrated his 100th birthday. Well, not they celebrated, he's dead now. It would have been his 100th birthday.
Yeah.
And he hit 400 several seasons in a row. Not in a row, maybe, but he hit over 400. There hasn't been a single baseball player that comes even close to this since that time. This is from the early 40s.
Yeah.
See, and it's because we're not doing both the technical and the physical training. And the physical is one thing if you're not already doing it. I don't know if you're familiar with specialized strength exercises.
Yes.
Okay. So you need the technique, but you blend one aspect of technique, you take that one joint action, and you develop technical together with the physical. That's the beauty of such exercises. And when you combine the technical with the physical, you get tremendous results very quickly because it has a direct effect on performance. Technique work by itself affects performance. Physical work affects performance, but not as much as when the two are combined in the way that they're used in that sport. This had a great impact.
Yeah.
And you see the greatest improvement when people start doing exercises that include both.
I guess the trick is... I guess the trick is, though, is getting that that specialization, that specificity in the exercise, but without overloading a skilled pattern too closely so that it actually messes up the technique if it's too heavily loaded.
You want that. That's why you do it. Sometimes if you want to make corrections and make something better, see, it should never interfere unless they have poor execution. Now you want to have better execution. Here's how you could use the exercise. So, these specialized exercises are used both for correcting improvement, improving performance. So it has two different avenues. And usually you do both at the same time. See, but if you just do a strength exercise, that has more impact as to messing up one's technique, as opposed to a specialized exercise, which will affect what they do in performance. And that's why training of this sort has to be done while they're not competing. Because if they're competing, it will mess up what they're learning.
Right.
You can't be training and competing. I mean, you can train and compete, but generally speaking, you do not do a lot of training. All you do, what you should be doing, when you're in a competitive period, is working on honing the skills, making them more perfect, and improving the speed and quickness of execution. But it shouldn't include any training to get stronger or anything like this.
Yeah, this is another typical problem with Muay Thai, in that they can be competing every 4 weeks in Thailand. Sometimes even sooner than that. So trying to actually come up with some sort of progressive training plan that actually provides a progression in terms of their athletics abilities, but also doesn't mess them up for a competition is pretty tricky.
Well, yeah, I'm with you. I understand fully where you're coming from. But in cases like that, what I typically do, I'll take 3 months for training and 1 month preparation for competition. It's not ideal, but you can't beat City Hall, so to speak.
Yeah.
So you go along with what they do, but make it as effective as possible.
The way I've been structuring training to try and cope with this, I tend to stick to 4 weeks of training, and then I'll have like a low week, a medium week, and a high week, and then like a deload that would typically, that deload would come the week of a fight as well. So then I would actually try and remove any kind of heavy neuromuscular stimulus in that last week, so there isn't that fatigue going into the fight. And then the fights I'd kind of scale, whether it's like a 1, 2, or a 3, whether it's a very important fight where I try and peak as much as possible, or whether it's more like at the other end of the spectrum, more like a friendly, where I'm using the fight as a test, but it's not that important if I win or lose. And actually the progression of my athletic progress is more important than the result from the fight. I'm using that kind of as a test. And I've kind of been programming around that sort of structure.
All right. That is good, Mary.
Yeah.
As long as you're getting results from it. Yeah, I mean, that's the bottom line. If you're not getting results, then you have to change the program.
Yeah.
No matter what I say or what you're doing or anybody else. If they're not making steady progress, then there's something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And in terms of, I mean, I know you're a big proponent of plyometric training. I mean, you're the guy who kind of brought it to us in the West, and that's something I think that's also not being really trained that well in Thailand. There's kind of I think there's a misunderstanding that Thai boxers tend to turn everything into an endurance session. So rather than doing something like plyometric, where it's nice and short and sharp, sort of 5 to 10 repetitions with a decent amount of rest between repeats, they'll start turning it into a power endurance session where things are getting slower and slower and slower as they're going through. And that's another kind of battle that the strength and conditioning coaches have with Thai boxers, stopping them to turning everything into an endurance session to try and almost mimic Thai boxing again, when they're getting those benefits in power endurance in the Thai boxing sessions on the pad work, and it's getting them to understand actually this session is different. Stop trying to replicate what you're doing in another session. You're getting that benefit, and to try and target something different with bigger rest intervals. And the only way I've found of making them adhere to rest intervals, because they're kind of looking at their watch and feeling like I've got to go again now, is to put some mobility work in and that kind of stuff in the rest intervals, and giving them a certain number of repetitions to do. That seems to work really well. Is that something you've come across before?
Well, my athletes, kind of are thankful for the rest that they're getting. So they're not looking for any mobility work or anything else. And here again, the plyometrics should be at a high enough level where they're going to welcome the rest. See, and one thing and it's tough, mainly because plyometrics, you don't feel the effect of it on the body, but you feel more of it the next day.
Yeah.
So you don't want them to learn the hard way. And sometimes they'll all do this, they'll do too much. Then the next day they come in, oh, I'm sore, I can't move, or, this hurts and that hurts. Well, you did too much, didn't you? And then they learn.
Yeah. And I think that's a big thing in Thai boxing as well, in that the Thai boxers are adapted to what they're used to doing. And a lot of that fatigue and the recovery that they have is all kind of structural and metabolic, and they're not so much neuromuscular because of the way they train. And as soon as you get them training with something like plyometrics that they just see as a bodyweight exercise and not a big deal, don't really understand the neuromuscular fatigue that you get from that when it's done properly, throwing that into the mix as well really means they have to structure their training much better to make sure they're getting recovery so that they improve, rather than going backwards and overtraining, because they kind of almost believe that overtraining is a myth, that you're just not working hard enough, and that that's when you start throwing in that neuromuscular component into the training, it's very different for them.
Yeah. This is a, I don't know how to explain it, but we do it a lot in the United States. And that is work them until they're hurting. This is a sign of a good workout. If you work up a good sweat, oh, I can't even move now. That was a great workout. You can't move when that's a great workout? See, this is the mentality.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying, it's on a different level. It's more on the endurance side, whereas in the U.S. it's going to be more on the strength side, lifting heavy weights. But no one realizes, or they have not come around to realizing and understanding that you don't need all of this. You can finish up your workout. You're going to be tired, but you shouldn't be sore the next day. You should be able to recover where you're ready to go at the same level, same intensity, same amount the next day. And if you can't do that, then you're doing too much. And usually they say, well, I'm going to fight through it. No, there's no fighting through it. Your body has to be ready for it. So it's not a matter of fighting through, but your body must be able to handle the workouts and handle it well. So it's a concept that I guess we all have to work on because too many athletes are brought up that way. Whereas, oh, you have to grind it out. You got to be pushing it. I want you dropping down like football coaches are famous for these, what they call, the short sprints, 40-yard dashes, like 10 and 20. There's a name that just slipped my mind. But it's the craziest thing in the world. I want them to do it until they drop. What does that mean? Oh, it makes them tough. See, they think of toughness as the ability to endure. That's not toughness. Toughness is in your head and what you show on the field. And you don't learn it from doing a strength exercise. But anyway, I digress.
That attitude is rife in Muay Thai. It's there's a time and a place for that, and they do that in sparring. They do that on the pads, but it's seeing the value of actually training in a different way to try and get a different kind of adaptation that doesn't need to be the same as everything else, and seeing it for what it is. That it's a different ability that you're fostering by taking more rest, because you're looking for either maximum speed, maximum strength, or maximum power, not in a fatigued state. And you can only develop that when you're not in a fatigued state. But that attitude of chasing the fatigue, otherwise it's a bad session. Yeah, it's a difficult kind of attitude to change. In terms of recovery, Dr. Yessis, what do you think of like some of these more high-tech tools now, like heart rate variability to determine whether an athlete's recovered or whether they need more training stimulus?
Well, I think they're valuable for the coach who doesn't know his athletes very well. Or when you have such large groups, like, for example, in football, if you got 60 to 100 people, there's no way in the world you can get to know all of them and their abilities and capabilities. So, if you know them, you know what your workouts are going to produce, and you can tell just by the way the athlete is working out. I can take one look at somebody when he starts his workout and he starts doing a few things. Hey, we better stop. You're not ready for this today. So something happened. He didn't sleep good, or he had a fight with his girlfriend, or whatever. But you're not ready for the training. I don't need a machine to tell me.
Yeah.
Or, something that's keeping tabs on. But when you have a large group, it has its value. There's no question about it. But the one thing I don't like about it, coaches who use this all the time, they rely on it. Okay, we got upper training. Oh, we got lower training. Up it, lower it. They're not looking at how are we going to make that athlete better. That should be the focus of all their training. How can we improve their performance? Not how can we adjust their workouts. It's more like, what is that workout doing for you? See, now, if you told them that, then I say they're great. But too many get locked in, and they don't do a good job in terms of really getting to know the athletes. They become administrators. Okay, now, your heart rate variable is a little bit too high. We're going to have to cut down on some of the running here. We're going to have to cut this down. Well, yeah, that's just adjusting the program. They're not looking at how can I adjust the program to make you better? What are you lacking? Make that workout more specific. See, typically that's good only when it comes to the physical. How about the technical side? See, and this is where we kind of fall down, I think.
Yes. Yeah. I've seen a lot of coaches using heart rate monitors as well, rather than just heart rate variability. But, I actually personally really like heart rate monitors during the sort of the metabolic and cardio parts of training, just so that, again, we can quantify with a strength session what percentage of rep max someone's working at, what that intensity is going to be. But for something like a fighter on the pads, we haven't got a running pace that we're adhering to or anything like that we can kind of gauge what the heart rate's doing. But I do see a lot of coaches, especially in group sessions, having fighters wearing heart rate monitors and just really comparing absolute beat minutes between fighters. I mean, that fighter's not working as hard as that one, and having no kind of relationship with what that fighter's real maximum heart rate is. So they're chasing a beats per minute rather than a percentage of that individual's heart rate maximum, which is obviously genetically very different. And I've seen some fighters pushed too hard because they're 5 to 10 beats per minute lower than some of the other fighters, but actually they were working up at sort of 90-95% of the maximum heart rate. It's just that genetically they didn't go as high. So that's right. Kind of one of my bugbears, is people kind of using some sort of tool like that, but not really understanding how to calibrate it for the individual and just going by a blanket number.
Yeah, so we're kind of on the same wavelength there.
Yeah.
But see, all these devices are great if you know how to use them and use them for that one purpose. But expanding the purposes of them, that's when I feel like they run into trouble. Seeing heart rate, those monitors are very good, especially to find out if there's something wrong with the guy's heart. You don't want them dropping dead on you or find out something wrong. So, yeah, they play a very important role in many respects.
Yeah. Another question I wanted to ask you, Dr. Yessis, was about plyometrics. It makes more sense. It's more logical for lower body exercises, so the depth jumps and things like this, even hurdles, and where we're making sure that ground contact is nice and short, sharp. For the upper body and the core, medicine balls being used to achieve that same effect. Have you some recommendations for that?
You don't have my book, Explosive Metrics, do you?
I don't actually. No, that's something I need to pick up.
I would recommend it. It's available on our website.
Right.
Look on our website, because see, there I have quite a few upper body plyometric exercises without the strength, without the medicine ball.
Okay.
They're analogous to the lower body in terms of what they do, as well as some total body exercises and so on. So there's quite an array, and I think you'll get a lot out of that. And some of them, like, for example, depth jumps or push-up jumps, they're analogous to a depth jump, especially when you do it off boxes. So when you're up higher, you get off, land on the ground, leap right back up on the box with the hands.
Yes, I've used that. It was trying to get that ground contact time down fast enough to become what would be a true plyometric, sort of under that sort of 250 milliseconds. So with the upper body, I find that much harder. I was kind of changing the angle, so perhaps having like an elevated push-up where the hands are either up on a bar and a rack that's giving you a higher angle, so more of your weight's in your feet, so you can explode and get a bit quicker with the contact time there, or off of a top of a box, for example. I'm just interested to hear what your thoughts were on what the speed really needs to be for an upper body plyometric. It is the same, is it?
Yeah, it can be the same. The trick here is that upper body, see, we do a few things to develop explosiveness of the upper body, but we do many things for the legs.
Yeah.
Even a simple act of jumping all the time, like play some basketball. So you're jumping. You jump a lot in soccer to get some balls. Almost every sport requires some form of jumping.
Yes.
You know, leaping is not in baseball. But not so with the arms. You do very little that requires explosiveness with the arms. And it's surprising because the boxers should have learned this years ago. But they haven't. They do just the way you described with the Muay Thai fighters. It's more repetition rather than a good explosive punch. So by working more with total body, you got to get the muscles accustomed to that explosiveness. It takes longer, but it can't be done. You may be trying to achieve it a little too quickly. Give it a couple of years. See, I don't introduce plyometrics until usually the second year of training. Mainly because there's no time. Because it takes that long just to develop the physical and technical base. That's first. Once you have the base, now we can do some explosive work. See, now we're going more toward the peaking side, or getting ready for competition. But in the first year of training or the second year of training, there is no competition. See, I wish this was true across the board. Because you can develop competition, but develop competition revolving around, let's say, who can jump the highest, who can throw the farthest, who can do the most push-ups, who can do the most whatever, or how much weight can you handle when you do the sex club. You can compete with exercises, with skills, and it would be very challenging. You have kids in football, what do they call it? What is it? They have to kick the distance. They have to run, I think. There are three or four events that they participate in. And it's all over the country. They just participate in these events. Great competition. No playing. It's only competing in skill.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that, well, obviously in Thailand, that's probably never going to change because financially they're getting the kids in there and earning money effectively. That's what's happening with their competition. But I think in the West, obviously we're approaching it from a different perspective.
I'm not doing it. I'm just saying this is what it should be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We have
I think a lot with the children. The problem is a lot of coaches see that the children have to be successful in competition for the coaches to feel validated. So rather than feeling like actually I'm preparing this junior fighter to be an elite adult fighter, which is where it's important, they're trying to make the junior fighter as good as possible, and shortcutting things that should be happening in the longer term for a bit of short-term glory, and really not really understanding the fact that that's what's happening, that they're actually children that are kind of peaking as children are peaking as children rather than adults, and that you've got less scope for improvement when it really counts if you're doing that.
Well, I don't know if it's possible, but what I've always maintained, and I've done this with some athletes, forget about making that team or impressing the coach. This way I'm going to train you. When you get to be 13 or 14, then we'll go into some competition and the coaches will say, where have you been? And then they're all going to be fighting over you. Because you're going to be so good, they're all going to want to be your coach. So you'll always find a few like this, or a few parents that will buy into what you're saying. Yeah, I'm going to have to convince them. Maybe the kid could do whatever. But it's the only way it's going to be broken, where you develop somebody the opposite way.
Yeah. I think we're starting to see in the West now the first kind of 18 to 19-year-old fighters that have been training a long time since they were children, and a lot of them are actually developing overuse injuries. They've got lower back problems, shoulders, knees, all these kind of things, because they've been mimicking the Thai model. And I think we're about to start seeing our first kind of generation, if you like, of Western Thai boxers that have done really the wrong things as a junior, and now they're kind of hitting that sort of 18, 19-year-old age where they should be now pushing into the elite, and they've got loads of skill, loads of experience, but now their bodies are going to start letting them down because they haven't been training in that balanced way, and they haven't really been looking after themselves. And it's a sad state of affairs, but I think we're going to start seeing that now, and I think it is present in Thailand, but it's not noticeable. It's kind of there's so many more fighters that there's so many fighters lining up to take those positions that you don't see the discarded ones, whereas I think in the West we're starting to see some of the broken ones now.
I see. This could be a wonderful opening where you can take someone and train him the right way. And you talk to the parents. Do you want your kid when he's 18 and 19 end up this way? Odds are that he will.
Yeah.
So let's get him to where he's going to be a real champion. And this is how we can do it. It's tough either way. But
yeah.
This is what you have to put up with.
And I'm sure you've seen a lot of it.
Oh, yeah. So. And what's sad to me, after all these years, that it still continues and is getting worse in most respects. We see a little bit on both sides, but most often they were still overdoing it. We're starting earlier and earlier and training harder and harder at a younger age.
Yeah.
It's all competition. They think competition is the way to learn. Competition is the worst way to learn skills or develop physical ability.
Yeah.
But you can't get pursuit of them. So the only way they listen is after they get injured.
Yes.
Now they're sitting down and can't compete. Now you can draw on it. That's true.
It's a shame, and I guess it's the same with all of us. We don't sort of listen, do we, until something gets broken. Normally, we're lucky if we're kind of being nurtured in the right way, really.
Right. Yeah. But what can you do? And it's especially sad when you see a youngster that has great potential and the dad seems to be on board with you all the way. And somebody else comes along, changes his mind overnight. This other person doesn't know what he's talking about, but it sure sounded good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm thinking of a young girl, she's about 11 now. I started working with her when she was about 10. She was a world-class runner. I mean, world-class. She was maybe 2 or 3 in the United States at that age. So I told the dad, look, when do you want her to be great? When she's 16 or 17? Or when she's 13? Oh, when she's 16 and 17. All right. And this is what we have to do. We're going to be aiming for doing her best at age 16. Well, I started on a program, and I said, and no competition. We're going to be working on improving your technique, developing the physical base, getting a good foundation. Started off doing exercises, and oh, I couldn't believe how uncoordinated she was. Here she was, right in the top 2 or 3 in the United States, in the world. But yet she was very uncoordinated. She couldn't do half of the exercises correctly.
Yeah.
And I was amazed. But I said, this is why we're doing this training. See, by doing these exercises, we're going to develop this coordination and so on, which will enable you to then do the best you can in your sport.
Yeah.
So they bought into it, but somebody else came along. He was one of these top speed gurus that was going to make her a champion in a year. Well, he must have seen stars in front of his eyes or whatever. So they dumped me, and she started competing, and of course she had an injury in no time. And then couldn't run for a long period of time. Then she started running again. Then she had another injury. Well, this is what you're looking for. So right now she's training, but more survival training.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good term, survival training. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is what you find, and you wonder, why is this? See, I think it's more the parents who get these ideas, and the girl was complaining, gee, all my friends are competing. I want to see all my friends at the competition, at the World Championships. You'll see them in time. You don't have to see them all the time. But anyway.
I think you also raise a good point there about the difference between your kind of like training age, if you like, in the preparatory stuff, the strength and conditioning, and your training age in your sport, and how you need to be prepared, even if you're kind of considered elite in your sport, that when you come to do the strength and conditioning work, that you soon find out, if you're being coached correctly, that there's some movement patterns that you can't do very well, and that actually you're very remedial in, despite you being a high-performing athlete in your sport, that you've got to accept that your body cheats its way around some movement patterns, and you probably weren't even realizing that, and that you've got to be prepared to step back and accept that, and work through the steps to get it where it needs to be. I see that a lot as well.
Oh, yeah. See, and there's one thing, a little tidbit that I learned from the Russians, which had quite a bit to do with my philosophy. You know, they had what I consider the best training system in the world back when they were, like, during the Cold War, before the country broke up. After the country broke up, yeah, they have remnants of the system, but it falls down. They eliminated all the major sports schools and things like that. So it's sad what's going on there now. But anyway, So I kind of go along with that philosophy of what has to be done from the very beginning. And if you don't develop this base at the beginning, it's going to catch up to you sooner or later. See, even like I mentioned, the 1x20 program. Now, I've had college coaches get on the 1x20 program. And I said to myself, no, it's not really intended for college athletes. They should be beyond this. But they did it. And lo and behold, the athletes improved. I said, well, there's only one reason for them improving. They never had the training that they needed when they were younger.
Yeah.
They were locked into only doing one little thing. They didn't get all the other things that are needed for a good foundation to enable them to become great.
Yeah.
So today I tell them, yeah, use it, they gain, fine, but then you can also use it as an unloading week or a period or a month. So, yeah, it could be in both ways. Yeah, when we have a long way to go yet.
Yeah, this with the program that I run my fighters through, I have the first 4 weeks is a preparation block, which is all about really balancing everything up before we start loading up and doing anything there.
Let me interrupt you, please.
Yeah.
What age are we talking about?
These are, well, because I'm doing it online, it's typically 18-year-olds and above.
All right, they should be ready for that then. Okay.
Yeah.
If we're younger, I would say no. But
yes. Yeah. Yeah. So it's and that's also something that I use as like a transition block to run between, you know, the higher periods of loading in a whole phase of training, as I'd call it. When they've peaked up to a fight, after a fight, they'll use that same preparation block for a shorter period of time, just to kind of reset things before we push on again. And just it gives us a bit of a chance to tidy up.
Okay, now, how much analysis do you do of their competitive fighting?
In which way? How do you mean?
Well, okay, I'll talk about what I do.
Yeah.
I would analyze their fight. Now I would say, okay, now, your kicks don't have any power to them, or your kicks are not connecting, whatever it might be. There's something wrong with the kicks that can be improved. And maybe one of the punches, maybe a left hook is not hooking. So then, when I go on a preparatory program, I would have specialized exercises where they would strengthen the muscles the way they're used in execution of those skills.
Yeah.
So this way, we're trying to correct and improve those skills, in addition to the other preparatory work. Because sometimes you don't need that preparatory work. They're already physically ready. What they need is more correction and enhancement of some skills.
Yes.
So the higher up you go, the higher your level, the less the physical training. Still there, but you got to be training year round, so you're never going to lose strength.
Yeah.
So you can lay off the physical training for a while, and just the competitive performances that you described, after doing all of this sparring and competition every couple of months.
Mm.
Well, that should maintain their strength. If not, put them on a maintenance program, only once a week. Total body workout.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually I also use, because it's difficult kind of picking when to get the strength sessions in, or the strength and conditioning sessions in, because there's so much Thai boxing training going on as well. I do use total body training routines each time, and I like to kind of visit that really typically twice a week, if I can. And I tend to use more of that sort of concurrent conjugate type approach to make sure there's elements of speed, there's elements of power, and there's elements of strength. And I'll kind of change the ratio of each of those depending on which block of training we're in. So even if they've got a fight in 4 weeks, it's not like any of the particular qualities, if you like, haven't been touched and maintained. It's just we're putting extra emphasis into building up certain ones in certain blocks of training.
I see now. What I do, and this doesn't mean that you should be doing this, because I know your athletes and I know my athletes, so I'm safe in saying what I'm saying about my athletes.
Yes.
Or the athletes that I did train. I don't conjugate with speed, strength, explosiveness, whatever. I keep everything pure. We're working on strength, we're working on strength. We're working on explosiveness, we're working on explosiveness. We're not mixing it up with strength or things in between. This is on a higher level now.
Yeah.
We're not talking about beginners. But I do concentrate more on the technique aspect. I want strength for the muscles as they use in execution of that skill. I want more speed of execution as seen in execution of that skill. I want more explosive power as seen in execution of that skill. So it's highly specific.
Right.
Because when you develop a general factor, whether it be strength or speed or explosiveness, a general factor does not transfer to a specific factor. In other words, it's not going to improve your performance.
Yes. Yeah, you've got to have that transfer.
It has, and in order to have a transfer, it's got to be very or highly specific.
Yes.
So that's where I have it duplicate. Like if I want speed, then that's it. Speed of a punch, speed of a kick, explosive power in a kick, in a punch, or whatever. More speed, more strength. See, everything is related to a skill. So that's just me.
Yeah, with the Thai boxers, they're working so much skill training all the time. What they seem to lack a lot of the time is some of that foundation stuff. So that's where I'm really trying to make sure they've got that coming in as well, and then still making sure we've obviously got that specialized training where we've got that transfer as well. But the foundation, so in the first place, that's one of the big places to start, because they are they're novices as far as the strength and conditioning side is concerned.
Yeah, but see, even if they're doing a lot of skill work, this doesn't mean that skill can't be improved through the physical training.
Oh, no,
you have to be able to analyze, all right, now what's wrong with this skill? Is he too slow in executing it? Does he need more speed? Should it be more explosive? Does he not have the right sequence of events? Is there any summation of forces? See, what can be improved to make that execution even better? You can't rely on the coaches doing it, because the coaches are doing something that they've been doing for 20, 30 years.
Yes.
This doesn't mean it's the way it should be done.
Yeah.
Game is always changing.
And I love the way you can use an exercise to provide that physical feedback to the fighter, so they can feel when there's something loaded a bit heavier. For example, like a shot put throw with a medicine ball, you can get the fighter to feel how they generate that force from the floor through the hips, and then connect the core eventually to the shoulder and the arm, kind of minimally on the end. And I know that's one of the papers I love kind of referring people to is that I'll probably massacre the name, to be honest, but is it Filimonov? I think you did the translation on it with the means of increasing punch strength. and it looked at the masters of sport and the sort of the juniors, and looked at where the force production happened in the body, either in the lower body, the core, or the arm, and how it was completely reversed with a junior. With the majority of it was in the arm, so they were preoccupied with the arm throwing the punch, and it was minimal in the leg, something like 17% or something in the leg, versus I think it was like 38% for a master of sport that was using the leg to generate that force and then transmitting it with the core eventually to the arm with not as much force in the arm, not as much power generated with the arm. It just connected that force to the opponent.
Yeah, very, very good. See, now this goes back to supporting my what I said earlier. Like you mentioned, the hips.
Yes.
What I found, almost all fighters don't have a separation between the shoulders and the hips. The
Right.
hips and shoulders work as a unit. Now that's losing a tremendous amount of force. Once you can get those hips moving before the shoulders, oh, you've increased that force like you can't believe.
Yes.
So that's where and I'm almost positive you're not going to find coaches telling you this, because sometimes it happens too fast. They can't even see it.
Mm.
It's the good ones, like you take a look at Chai. He's got good
Yes.
separation. And there was someone else, I think it was Chris, somebody, that Lawrence can tell you about. He has great separation of the hips from the
Yeah.
shoulders. But not your
Yeah.
typical boxer and your fighter.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. It's getting that stretch shortening cycle from the core, isn't it? You've got some elastic energy there you can use if you allow pre-stretch.
But the key is their technique. Are they doing it
Yeah.
to get this? And you can see, I keep going back to it all the time, you can see how I'm a really a proponent or a pusher for greater technique training
Yeah.
or skill. That skill execution is so important,
Yeah.
especially on the higher levels when we get into the transfer. If you don't have the right technique, forget it. It's not going to be any transfer.
It's all in the timing, isn't it? You can leak your energy.
And sometimes you pour it out. You don't leak it. Yeah. When they do it correctly, I remember a baseball player I was working with. I got him to separate the hips from his shoulders. And when he threw the ball, the first time he did it, after he learned how to do it, he looked at me, he said, he was startled, he was amazed. He said, that ball went flying and I didn't even do anything. He says, I never thrown so hard, but it felt like I didn't even exert myself at all. See, and this is what it feels like.
Yeah.
And how many fighters can say that? Man, I knocked him out and I didn't feel anything. Not the recipient, but the one throwing the
Yeah, it is good when you kind of. I mean, I really love taking fighters into the gym. If I see a technical mistake on the pads when they're throwing a technique or in sparring, then giving them a movement in the gym to try and feel it, and whether it's a medicine ball throw or something like that to try and get that connection, and to then take them back onto the pads and for them to feel it, and that look in the eye when they kind of, I thought I was throwing that right, and now it feels completely different as I throw it, and that realization. It is something you've got to kind of just feel, isn't it? You can't think it; it's too slow. You've got to feel that transfer and that energy kind of come through and that power transmit. And when you feel it, that's when it's like, that was how it should have been.
See, and typically to find the, I won't say error, but to discover what is the weak link. Maybe there are several of them. And usually when there's several of them, I'll have the person work on each one separately.
Mm.
Then we kind of combine them later on. But we have to work on them until they're mastered. And you can't do it at the same time or back into competition. You cannot compete. Once you compete, you're going to go back to what you were doing.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
and it's as much about teaching them to relax the parts that shouldn't be involved as much as working the bits that are actually firing to get that nice fluid movement, isn't it?
Yeah, I typically don't worry about what to relax. If they know what to do and do it, the others will automatically relax.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem.
I mean, when you try and get someone to throw something as hard as they can with a punch or a kick, quite often you'll see initially all the muscles switch on. Everything's tense and they're driving with that brake on. And once you get them to kind of relax and throw it without all that extra tension, then it actually comes out harder, and they can't believe with less effort, just being more coordinated and the sequence running correctly, that it actually comes through harder when they feel like they're not putting as much effort in.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to be said for that. And world-class runners, sprinters, they are so relaxed you can see their hand flapping while they're running.
Mm-hmm.
See why we teach everybody to make those fingers together, you know. Yeah, on the highest levels. But anyway, the training of a high-level athlete is a heck of a lot different from a low-level athlete.
Yes.
We combine them all. We should not combine them. There's one thing I learned from the Russians again. There are different levels of athletes.
Mm.
They had level 1, level 2, level 3.
Yes.
And they had master of sport, honored master of sport, honored master of international sport. Each one, they had criteria for them. Like if it was a sprinter, or let's say more like with the Muay Thai, would be a combination of skill execution, wins, losses, and so on, in order for them to get a ranking.
Mm.
Or they would have to generate X amount of speed or have all of these skills developed. It wouldn't just be because they won a particular match.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a movement competence at the end of the day, isn't it? It's being able to execute correctly the skilled movements. And there's the skilled movements in the sport, and there's also the skilled movements you're replicating in the gym, which sometimes we can use to kind of screen problems in the sport movement, because we can isolate a little bit more and test for it.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting. It'd be nice to actually have some cases to look at them and okay, now here's what the training should be, or what should be. What exercise would you give them? Once you see this, so we have a ways to go to get to this point where people could share and not be afraid of giving away my secrets.
Yes.
What I do. Too often where, I got this once from, I don't know where it was. I was talking about, aren't you afraid? This came from the Russians. I said, I was talking to the Russian. I said, aren't you afraid that I'm going to take what you're telling me and give it to all the coaches in the United States, and then they're going to turn around and beat you? He looked at me and laughed. He said, by the time you start doing what I'm doing, we're going to be doing something different. Sure, take it all, give it out, who cares?
Yeah.
There are no secrets.
That's confidence that you're developing yourself and your approach all the time, isn't it? And it's not static. Well,
I think we've had it. Or I'm getting to the point, spending all that time trying to get on Skype. I really apologize for holding you up that long.
That's no problem at all. No, thank you for the opportunity to have a chat and for sharing all your knowledge there.
I enjoyed it. It was fun. And we'll see what Lawrence can do putting it all together.
Yeah.
We'll see how he's going to take my little picture and your big picture and put it side by side. So, Lawrence, if you're listening, good luck putting it all together. I hope it looks good.
Work some magic. He's good at that stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's a good man. Had to help him out. So, okay. Good meeting you. Maybe we'll talk again soon. Sometime in the future. And good luck in your work.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Right on. Bye now.
Goodbye.